Hello everybody. We're going to be looking at some notes first. I did attach the PowerPoint a little later because I kind of forgot to put it on there. Um, but we're going to look at some compound inequalities today. If you understood yesterday pretty easily, this is just a little bit of reasoning tacked on top of that. So it's not too difficult. However, it takes some focus, and don't rush these because that's where you're going to make mistakes. Compound inequalities are like normal inequalities, only they're compounded with another inequality. So compound inequality, just so we know we're doing compound inequalities today. And if you're following along with the PowerPoint, it's coming right off of that. Compound inequalities are two inequalities joined by the words and or. So it's going to be a combination of inequalities. There's not going to be one because you're drawing me pictures, Jack. So I wasn't sure how to get it in the Google for you drawing me pictures. But we're going to take some notes on compound inequalities. So follow along with the PowerPoint as I explain it all. So compound inequalities are two inequalities joined by the words and or. So for example, if you look at the notes, i.e. examples of these are x is greater than -5 and x is less than 7. And these are the kind of things you're going to start to see. They're pretty straightforward. This is also written and what you see more often, especially with the and ones, as -5 is less than x, which is less than 7. So you're going to see it written like this. This is a compound inequality. Or you're going to see things written like or x is greater than 7, which doesn't make sense because they're going to be overlapping. If I switch this around, it'll make more sense. I believe that's going to work. But you're going to see them like this and that. Those are the two kind of ways you're going to see these things written. We're not going to get into solving them too much today, but I do want you to make sure you know how to graph. Do you want us to send a picture of our assignment? No, I'm not going to grade the assignment. I'm just going to assume that you did it. There will be questions on the test based on this assignment, and you're required to know it. So if you have questions or don't understand what's going on, you can email me, and I can make a video real quick. But it's hard for me to read pictures when you take them, so I'm not going to be able to tell if you did it right or not. And it's hard for you to type these things. So if you really want to, maybe you can go into Paint and learn how to use a Paint program. Or use a stylus like I do. You can share that with me if you want, but I'm not going to require you to show me this because it might require some hardware that people don't have, and therefore that's kind of not fair for everybody. So I'm going to trust that you do it on pen and paper. It's not going to be graded though because I can't collect it fairly. You're going to get these things written probably in words as well and need to translate them. So we're looking for things in this kind of format because those are what compound inequalities. And if you are following along with the PowerPoint, the first question is stating this. So it wants me to list, really, that's what it's asking you. It wants you to identify every real number that is less than -2 and at most 4. So I want every single number that fits that criteria. So it has to be a real number, so we're not looking at imaginary numbers. And it has to be at least -2 and at most 4. You should note that we have an and here. So we're looking at something in the form of and. So at least 2 means our number, which I'm going to call n for number, is at least 2. So think about that in your head. Can it be larger than 2? Or sorry, that's -2. Can it be larger than -2 or smaller than -2? So pick a couple numbers and put it in your head and think which makes more sense. So let's pick -3. Is -3 at least -2? And then let's pick, is -1 at least -2? According to these statements, this is the one that makes sense, right? Not this one. So n, being this number here that you made up, has to be at least -2, or -1 being larger than -2, n has to be larger than -2, right? So 1 is at least -2, 0 is at least -2, and so on. And then it says at most 4. So again, think in your head, pick some numbers. Let's pick one above. Is 6 at most 4, or is 3 at most 4? So I picked a number above 4 and a number below 4 in my head, and I'm just thinking about it. Is 3 at most 4? Is 6 at most 4? This one's going to be all real numbers in at most 4, 6 at most 4, now 3 at most 4. I'm getting confused by my wording now too. Is 6 at most 4? I believe it's going to be that one. That one makes more sense to me right now. Is 3 at most 4? Right? It can't be more than 4 is what it's going for. So here n has to be less than 4. Now I can't put it like that, but I don't really like it that way because the smaller number is first, so I'm going to flip everything around. And when I flip everything around, everything gets flipped around. The signs get flipped as well. So either one of these is acceptable. However, this is the preferred method. Once you've figured that out, you need to graph it, and that's what your assignment is going to say. Can you graph this? And I think it actually, in your book, it makes it easy because it doesn't actually combine it. It keeps them separate. But let's look at graphing this. So first, you need a number line. On this number line, different from yesterday's graphing, we have two numbers that are standing out. You have a -2 and you have a 4. So I'm going to definitely put -2 in, and I'm going to definitely put 4 in. Keeping in mind -2 comes before -4 on a number line. So those are the numbers I need on there. And I'm looking at numbers that, according to this side, let's erase my circles here. According to this side here, right, -2 is less than n, which means n has to be greater than it. And keeping in mind this inequality sign, I'm going to come over here and I'm going to write them again. This sign and this sign get circles, just like last time. This sign and this sign get dots. So these are inclusive, these are not inclusive. So over 2, I don't have at least -2. Actually, at least -2 means you can be -2 and you can be 4. So these are actually equal to signs. That's me just reading it wrong as I work through it right now. So keeping in mind those are greater than or equal to signs. So this is going to be a dot because -2, right? -2 is at least 2, -2. And 4 is at most 4. So those fit those criteria. So they are going to both be dots because they're going to have these lines under them. So they are both dots. This one here, let's color code this a bit for us. So let's look at this side here as blue. I know it's a dot over the 2, and do I want to shade in the direction higher than 2 or less than 2? And it's looking like n has to be greater than 2, so it has to go in this direction. And that's going to continue forever in that direction. I guess I should just do it all out. Okay. Next, I'm going to look at this section. N is less than or equal to 4, which means it's going to be a dot on the 4. And I want numbers less than or equal to. So this is going to extend in this direction. Okay. And our answer is going to be the overlapping part because it's and. I want things that fit both these criteria. Well, this number out here does not fit the red criteria, and this number over here does not fit the blue criteria. So what I really want, I'll go back to black, I guess, is everything in between these. So I'm going to shade between the 2 dots. This here is all the possible real numbers that are between these. So any number between -2 and +4 meet this criteria. Your assignment, if you want to start it, it's page 377, 1 through 9. It's just asking you to graph it. So this here's calculus notation. We're not going to use that. It's every number between these two. So you're going to get the black shaded area for it. Keeping in mind these are dots because these are equal to. Keeping in mind I want everything greater than 2 but less than 4. Greater than -2 but less than 4. So that this here is the answer for that. The next problem I'd like to look at is this one. There is not a docs for this. Again, I'm just going to trust that you did it. I'm not grading you on it. It's a skill you need to know how to do. I'm showing you how to do it. I'm not asking for a picture either. You can if you want to, but they're really hard for me to read at times. Some of you are really not good at photography. So you don't have to turn in anything to me today. You just have to know how to do it. There will be questions on your test based off of it, so know how to do it. Today's temperature will be above 32, but not as high as 40. So again, you're just going to you're drawing the pictures. The assignment's asking for the graphs. It's asking for the number lines. You might be able to. I just haven't figured out a good way to do it. But yeah, so today's temperature will be above 32 degrees, but not as high as 40. So again, picking that out, just in your head reasoning through that, that means at 32 it has to be higher than 32, and it has to be lower than 40. It's, for this one, 32 is not above 32. So in this case, you're using signs like this or like this. It can't be the equal to sign. So here we have 32, and it has to be above 32. So I want numbers greater than 32. So my numbers have to be greater than 32. And 40, my numbers have to be less than 40. It probably will be, Logan. But this here is your inequality. You now need to graph this. And again, your book is going to pull that apart, and I'll do it. I'll color code it again. Your book actually pulls this apart for you and says, hey, graph these things. And all that you're doing is what you did yesterday for graphing, only on the same number line. I need a 32, and I need a 40. My other numbers I don't really care about. I just need the direction it's going. And the temperature has to, I mean, just by reading this, you know the temperature has to be between these two. It has to be higher than 32, less than 40. But to graph it, 32 has a circle over the end. So there would be a circle over here. And it has to be greater, so it's going off in this direction. And 40, again, has to have a circle over it, and it's going off in this direction. And where they overlap, you have a circle over 32, you have a circle over 40, and you have everything between. It's shaded. So this here is saying I want everything between these two numbers. Anything between these two numbers, not including them, is an acceptable answer for what today's temperature would be. Those were both AND problems. So when it comes to AND problems, your graph tends to look like this. This is what an AND problem is going to be. You're going to get overlapping areas, and you want what's in between them because it meets both cases. Let's look at one that's an OR case. And I don't have a question for this one. I just have the inequality. So here we have an OR case, which is x is less than -3 or x is greater than 7. So we have two conditions here that will meet for our solution. In this case, you're just going to graph both of these things on the same number line, and it's going to spread in opposite directions here, or it tends to spread in opposite directions, and you'll see that. Let's go ahead and color code that again. So let's make this guy blue. And blue deals with, oh here, let's get our -3 on there and our 7 on there. I don't really care much about anything else, but blue deals with a less than sign, so it's a circle. And I want numbers that are less than -3, so I'm going off in this direction here. So I shade that way. Red, we're talking about 7, and 7 is, again, x has to be greater than 7. It can't be equal to it, so it's a circle. And in this case, numbers greater than 7 are off in this direction. So it gets shaded this way. And this would be your answer. You don't have to color code it. I can do it in black too. So you can do this all with one. One is not better than the other. Circle, circle, this way, this way. So this is your answer for an OR problem. You'll note that it's not what is overlapping. It has to fit one of them, not both. So only has to fit one. So in this case, numbers like -4 are going to work, but also numbers like +10, +12 are going to work because they fit over here, and -4 fits over here. So any number that's like that. And that lists all of them. So drawing the picture or writing the inequality lists everything that's possible. I do not think we're going to get into solving them today, because your book doesn't even get into that. But I gave you notes on solving them if you want to know how to solve them. It's in there, but basically when you solve these things, like what if you have -3 that j plus 2 and 7. What you're going to do is you're going to pull them apart and solve them separately. You can solve that like we did yesterday, and then j plus 2. You can solve that like we did yesterday, and so on for that. So yeah, let's look at the assignment. We're on page 377, and you're looking at 1 through 9, and you're asked to graph them. So you're just graphing them today, which is not difficult at all because it even pulls things apart for you. So if you're looking at number 1, it's going to be x greater than or equal to 0 and x is greater than or less than 7. So you could have written this, which is what you're normally going to start seeing them written as. You're not going to see ands pulled apart like this. Ors will be pulled apart, but if they're using the word and, you can just condense it into one thing and get, what is it, 0 has to be less than or equal to x. It's going to look like that when you see it. But when you go to graph this, you're pulling it apart anyways, so you don't need to be concerned with that today. But again, draw your number line, the graph. You need a 0 and you need a 7. 0 is less than 7, so I put it first. You want numbers that are greater than or equal to, so this has a dot. This is less than or equal to, so that has a dot. And do the fact that it's an and. If it's actually true, it might not have answers if this is wrong, so be aware of that. There is a possibility that they give you ones that don't have answers. You won't see that in real life because that doesn't make any sense, because it doesn't have an answer. But here you need numbers where x is greater than or equal to 0, so here I shade in this direction. And over here I need numbers that for x that are less than or equal, so I shade in this direction, which means I want the middle section here. So that's what number 1 looks like. And again, I'm going to trust that you just drew them. I'm actually going to skip to number 4, just to give you another look at the OR problems that you have. Greater than -1, or less than 4. And usually when you see OR, you should be thinking, hey, this is going to be split. There's going to be one arrow going off in one direction and one arrow going off in the other. Not always, because sometimes it's tricky and it lies to you, but that's normally what it's going to be. So here you have B has to be greater than -1. So this one here might be a bit tricky. I did write that correct. No, I'm sorry. I wrote that wrong. That has to be like that. Did I copy the one right? Yeah. So here B has to be less than -1. So circles because it doesn't have the equal to. Circle because this doesn't have the equal to. Less than -1 is in this direction. Greater than -4 is in this direction. So it's really not difficult. Just takes a little practice reading them and interpreting what they actually mean. Right? So if I gave you the other way, like I made the mistake here, then your answer would be just it has to be greater than -1. So it would be everything over this way. And in that case, you wouldn't write this. That's if I kept that mistake. Like in the real world, who cares why the 4's there? What I mean, why not a 3 too? I mean, it's 4 is an answer because it fits one of them. Are there any questions on specific ones you want me to go over? Luke mentioned number 2. Did you have a question on 2, Luke? 2's not difficult. -4 is less than -2, so I stuck it over there. Z has to be less than -2. So it's a circle greater than or equal to that. So this one's a dot. And you want the stuff between. Yeah, the assignment's right here. You need to graph them. Again, you're not turning them into me because I'm not going to be able to read them. So I'm just going to trust that you did them, and if you have questions, you ask. You place the numbers on the number line in the order that numbers go on the number line. So here I place -4 first because it happens before -2. You do number 5, sure. C2 or C 3.5. Just don't get confused with decimals. They don't really do anything. But you have your number line. You have a 2, which is the smaller of the two numbers, and you have a 3.5, which is the larger of the two. Both of them are going to be circles because there's no equal to sign, so I'm going to circle both of them. And then C has to be less than 2, so that would be this direction. Because again, numbers smaller than 2 are over there. C has to be greater than 3.5, that would be this direction. So there's number 5. Nothing changes with the decimal, just leave it there. Your number lines don't have to be amazing. I'm looking for the two numbers. Again, instead of writing all of this, people normally just write these things. Or when you get to calculus, it's written like, hey, this goes to -infinity and 2. And over here, this would be 3.5 to positive infinity inclusive. I don't know why calculus does it this way, but it's a lot easier to me. It makes more sense to me. You use the bracket for inclusive, so if it can equal that, it's inclusive. We use the parenthesis for exclusive, so if it doesn't equal it, there's that. So it's not allowed to equal 2, but it has to get as close to 2 as possible, and it can go up to negative infinity for all I care. Limits are pretty easy. I don't know why we don't do them in other math classes as well as often, but yeah. Just a different notation for it. If there are no other questions, Again, I'm just trusting that you're going to do those ones. You will be responsible for things on the test. It might be kind of going in the reverse. I might give you the graph and tell you to write the inequalities based off of it because that's easier for me to read. So just be aware. Like if I give you the graph, -1 and I don't know 3 or something, and it's dot circle. You know that this has to be x has to be greater than -1, but it can also be equal to it because it's a dot, and x has to be less than 3, and it cannot be equal to it because it's a circle. So I might ask you to go in reverse, but I haven't made the test yet due to the fact that I'm not sure how well we can do on the computer with things. If there are no other questions, I'm going to end it, and email me if you have any further questions. I can draw a few out for you, but it's really not too difficult. It's just a little bit of reasoning, trial and error, test things out, guess and check type deal, and then draw your picture. So with that, I'm ending it. So long.